thank you. You ready for school? You ready for school? You want to play? Yeah. What do you want to do today? Okay. All right. So day one of the back-to-back challenge is underway. We're already a little bit behind schedule because I've got to upload the current video from yesterday detailing kind of everything that's been happening lately. So gonna head home, hopefully get that up ASAP, and then head immediately to the casino. All right, guys. All right, today was an interesting one. Let's get back to the car, go over some hand histories. Before we get on the road, got a couple of hands to discuss. Might end up discussing some of these on the road as well because we got to go pick up Charlie. But most of the situation can be detailed as poker is about creating advantageous situations. And that's what I did all day today. Got to isolate and play the players you want to play in position. And, you know, just pounce on the weakness. So in this hand, under the gun player opens to 25. He's playing an $850 stack. We cover. There's a couple of callers, both of which are players I want to be playing pots with. I have 5-7 offsuit on the button. It's a spot where I might be 3-betting to isolate against the weaker players, but given the under the gun's kind of opening size and just who he was as a player, I didn't think he'd be opening light. I could fold here, but I elect to call to play a pot in position, and one of the blinds calls as well. Flop comes 6-6 deuce, and it checks to me. I bet 55, kind of playing the line that I do have 5-7, so I block 6-5 and the 6-7. And given the fact that everyone's checked to me, I think it's kind of green light to be taking multiple streets here, betting. The small blind is the only caller, which is rather unfortunate because I think he's going to be the most likely person to have a 6 here when it comes 6-6 deuce, and he checks to the pre-flop raiser. The turn is a 7, and he checks. This is a spot where I'm often going to just pot control and take my equity and try to get the showdown as cheap as possible. But against this opponent, I decided to kind of take an exploitative line and bet for value against hands like a deuce, as well as 3-3, 4-4, and 5-5. It's against a better player, I'm just never going to be betting here. But at the same time, I think against this specific opponent, I can bet for value. If I get check raised, I can fold. He's just always going to have a 6. Anyway, so I end up betting the same bet, 55, and he calls. The river's a deuce, and now he leads into me for 150. I think pretty easy spot. It's always a fold. I don't think he's ever bluffing. He's got a minimum of deuce here. I don't think he's going to be turning some hand like 4-5 or 3-5 or some gut shot into a bluff here. So I fold pretty confidently, feeling fine that he's got the 6. In this next hand, it folds to the button, who is, again, one of the players that I'm looking to be playing pots against. So he likes playing hands. He limps, small blind limps, and I have 5-7 of clubs in the big blind. This is a spot where I'm going to take initiative. I think it's really important to build pots against weaker opponents. And even if you do end up playing some big pot or end up losing a hand to him, it creates a great dynamic going forward against those players who you'd want to be playing against. Especially, in this case, I'm out of position, but especially on someone that you have position against going forward. So I make it 30. He calls, of course. Nobody limps the button and then folds, and the small blind folds. The flop comes Jack 5 deuce with 2 diamonds. I bet 45 into 60, and he folds. So, you know, pretty easy spot. I just think in this hand he's going to be missing a lot, so I'm going to be able to take away the pot, and I just know that he's kind of just limp calling a super wide range. The next dynamic happens when one of the weaker players opens to 15. I have 9-7 off. I decide to 3-bet to 45. Folds back to him. He folds. The very next hand, he opens to 15 again. This time I have ace-king off. I 3-bet to 50. The small blind cold calls 50, and he calls the raise as well. The flop comes king jack X. I think it's like king jack 4, something like that. They both check, and I bet 65 into 150. They both call. Turns a queen, which is not my favorite card because I think a lot of times here someone could have king queen, ace 10, and possibly queen jack as well. They both check, and I decided to go for a little bit of thin value. I bet 130. I think if either of them end up check raising, I'm just going to fold here because there's really no way that ace-king I think is going to be the best hand here. There's some percentage of the time one of them could have a set of jacks. I don't really see that happening given the check, the flat on the flop. But anyway, I bet 130, and they both end up calling. The river is a brick, and they both check. And so now my decision process here is whether should I be going for thin value or possibly even turning my hand into a bluff to get hands like king, queen, or queen, jack to fold. I think going for a thin value here is kind of a mistake because as the pre-flop 3-better, I'm going to look very, very strong here. So I think a hand like king, queen, queen, jack, are going to be in check call mode because they're going to be afraid of me, who's pretty tight in a 3-bet situation, and I don't think they realize that they can be going, you know, for like a check raise, or that they're going to be just betting their hand for themselves. So I think a lot of times you'll find weaker 3-5 players in this spot will just be check calling down with a hand, like I said, like queen jack. So I think value betting here is a mistake unless I can very closely pinpoint their hands as something like king 10, king 9, ace queen, and I think that's about all I'm going to be able to get value from. So now the question is whether I can turn my hand into a bluff by jamming this river. They both have about $500 or $600, so that sets up about a pot-sized bluff jam, but I end up just deciding that there's just no way that either of these players are going to, like, the hands I'm trying to get them to fold are like king, queen, queen, jack. I don't think either of them are going to be folding these hands, and no one here is trying to hero fold, so I end up checking back. And to my surprise, the small blind has ace-queen, so he flopped a gutter to the nuts on the flop. He called, turns second pair, and he calls again. And the other player has ace-jack, flops second pair, top kicker, and calls 2 barrels as well when he picks up a gutter. So I think I kind of got the max in this hand. Possibly could have bet larger on the turn, but if I bet larger on the turn, it's possible both of them just end up folding. So that's about the only thing I think I could have done differently. I don't see how I could have gotten value on the river unless I bet maybe like $100 and try to get some value from ace queen, but I don't think that would have happened in this case. One thing you'll notice from my hand histories is oftentimes in any given session, most of the hands that I play will be against the same opponents, basically because generally I'm trying to find the weakest players in the game and I'm going to be targeting them in as many pots as possible. Once again, this hand is a similar situation. One of these players limps. I have queen jack offsuit. I make it 25. The button calls. He calls as well. Sorry, I just realized I don't have queen jack. I have queen 10. Flop comes jack 7-4. I have queen 10 offsuit. It goes check. I bet 30 into 75. The player on the button insta-mucks. And now the player who had been targeting min raises to 60. I think this is just super goofy. Considering that I bet so small on the flop, I think he's doing this really wide. And similarly, he just doesn't really have to have that strong of a hand to be raising to this size. So I end up calling, and really what I'm hoping for on the turn is not a queen, but a king, so I can pick up a straight draw. Also, I think the king is going to hit my range way better than it is his. So anyway, the turn's a king, which is great. I pick up open-ended. Now he bets 30, and I think this kind of just tells me, A, he's weak, and B, he's got a jack that's trying to figure out where he's at. He bets 30. I make it 170. He shows the jack and pretty much instantly mucks. So it kind of goes to show you, as I said, poker is about creating advantageous situations. You want to find the players in the game who you're better than and play as many pots as possible against them. Surprise, surprise. This hand, also against the same opponent. Couple of limpers, maybe 3 or 4 limpers. The action player on the button makes it 25. I have queen jack offsuit in the big blind. Obviously, I don't want to be folding to him. I want to be playing a pot against him, but I also don't want to be playing a multi-way pot out of position with queen jack offsuit. It doesn't play that well, like 5 ways, which is often going to happen here if I call. It's just going to set off a cascading waterfall of calls behind me. So I like to 3-bet. I don't want to 3-bet too large in case he ends up 4-betting. I don't think I need to go large, so I end up 3-betting to 65. Folds back to him. He calls. Flop comes king 6-7 with 2 clubs. I can just lead into him and go for a multi-streets bluff, but I've seen him kind of take these weak stabs in position before when check to, so I decided to just check to him. He bets 35. Again, just looks very similar to everything he's been doing before, where when check to, he just kind of can't help himself. I end up check raising to 110. He like thinks for a while, kind of starts motioning towards his chips, towards his stack, and I can just tell he's not very strong and he's thinking of getting out of line. Not that I'm, excited about him doing that in this case because I have queen high, but I can just feel it just by kind of paying attention to him. He ends up thinking for a while and decides better of it. He shows the queen of clubs on the king 6-7 2-club board, and he's like, oh, big draw, and folds. Obviously, he doesn't have queen x of clubs and folding in position. Just had a queen high, which I should have the best hand unless we have the same hand. So anyway, again, showing how powerful it is to just play against opponents who you're going to be very comfortable with in hands and who kind of give the strength of their hands away. There was actually something this opponent did in a big pot later on, which I think is a great example of what not to do, and just a really big tell that I've seen numerous times. So there's a hand where it comes like king 10 4 with 2 clubs. I didn't see the action, but on the river it's like a 10 and the flush draw gets there. The player that would have been betting every street ends up checking the river, and now this guy ends up betting like $200 and something. And the other player, who, you know, it's pretty obvious this guy's an action player, the other player's in the tank, he has pocket sevens, and he's actually thinking it over here. And as he's thinking it over, the player who had bluffed the river starts kind of going with his hand, like showing it, like he wants to show it. And this is like a huge tell from, you know, non-professional players that they're trying to feign strength and they want the other player to fold. And that they're just kind of they're like so excited about how strong their hand that they want to show it. Never really happens with someone who actually has a strong hand. I think in like the 10 years I've played, I've used this tell like 10 times. I've made like one incorrect call here light. It's almost always they're bluffing. So anyway, if the guy ends up calling with pocket sevens and he wins, he's right. I don't even remember what the other player had. He just had like a complete airball. And there's just no doubt in my mind the only reason he called was because of this tell. Because there's just no way you can call pocket sevens on a king 10-10 3 club board with pocket sevens. He just ended up seeing that what this guy was doing and knew that he was, you know, trying to get him to fold. So again, you know, trying to do these like goofy kind of tells and stuff, better players are just going to pick up on them. And that brings us, you know, strangely enough, to our last hand, which is going to show how big of an idiot I am. So I have 6 deuce of hearts in the big blind, folds to the button, who is the same button that has been all session, the action player. He limps, small blind limps, I check my option. This time I'm on my phone trying to cancel a phone. I was supposed to go to Apple to get a new battery for my other phone, which I was planning on using to record at the table. I ended up deciding to cancel that appointment because the game was just so good I didn't want to leave and figured it'd be better to be playing. So I was kind of preoccupied with trying to cancel this appointment. The flop comes king jack like 4 with 2 hearts. It goes check. I check my flush draw. The button now bets 10. The small blind calls, and this is not a spot I want to be calling with a 6 high flush draw out of position. I want to take the aggressive action. I check raise to 50. The button calls, player in between folds. The turn is a brick. Actually, the turn's a 10. So I think this is just a great card for me to continue betting on. It's possible the button who limped has a flush draw himself. Similarly, considering that he's limping the button, it's very unlikely that he has too strong of a hand. So I bet 70, and now he min raises to 140. I don't love it, but I think for a min raise, there's not much I can do here with a flush draw. I don't think he's going to be min raising me here with a flush draw himself. So I got to assume that my flush draw is almost always going to be live here, unless he very specifically has like king 10 of hearts, because the board is king jack 4 10 with the jack 4 of hearts, so the king 10 could be hearts, or maybe if he has like a hand like king 9 of hearts or something like that. But I just don't really see how I could be drawing dead. I call. The river's a king of hearts, pairing the board, but brings in my flush. I think for a bit, and I decided to check to just kind of check call in this spot. I don't think I could be going for value here with the 6 high flush. I check, he checks behind, I roll my hand over, and it's not 6 deuce of hearts. Yeah, that's right, not 6 deuce of hearts. I have the 6 of spades and the deuce of hearts. Holy crap. I don't know when the hell this is the last time something like this has happened to me, because I am a giant advocate of like looking back at your hand multiple times in hands, especially when like action changes. Like if you bet and get raised, look back, make sure you have what you have. I was preoccupied canceling the appointment. Was pretty tired, I guess. Didn't get much sleep last night. It was like 4:30 towards the end of my session, and I just brain farted. I don't know what happened. It's rather unfortunate because it cost me like 220 bucks. Obviously, I'm never check raising this flop with 6 high. The button ends up having aces, so he limped the button with aces, trying to get all tricky and trappy. He crushed me. I mean, well played, dude. Unless I had 6 deuce of hearts, because then I would have won. But I didn't have 6 deuce of hearts. I'm an idiot. So, goes to show you, you know, even people that play every day make ridiculous mistakes. I'd like to think that something like this won't happen going forward, because I don't think it's happened like in at least like 5 years plus that I've misread my hand. But things do happen. So, yeah, that will unfortunately end the hand histories for the day. Thankfully, after that hand, I ended up picking pocket queens up in a hand. I opened to like 50 in a straddle pot. Comes like king 10 high against like 2 action players. I check back, turns like a brick. Somebody leads for 40. I call, the other player calls, and I get to showdown queens for a win. And then I have another hand where I flop trips and end up check raising the flop and win. So I ended up winning a little more than when I was supposed to leave for my appointment. So that's nice, but pretty ridiculous that I made that giant mistake of mine with 6 deuce. I'd like to hope that that doesn't happen anytime soon again. So we ended up pulling off a W, won $920 for the day. Pretty sweet. Things have been going well as of late. And that's going to wrap it up. Like I said, we're on our way to pick up Charlie right now. It's 5:30. I got to be there within half an hour. So how's your day, Charlie? You got to press 1. 1. You can do it. There you go. How's your day? Did you have fun? Did you have fun? All right, I think we had fun. Did you have fun? Say bye. Bye.